recording it right now before I forget. So I am recording this meeting, our Zoom class today. And so you guys are able, if you want to, you can just pay attention. You don't have to necessarily take any notes or anything. I am recording this, and so I will send out the link to the Zoom recording after class is finished. And so you could go back and look if you want to, either way that you want to do it. But we're going to go through a journal entry exercise where we get some practice with several different journal entries for company. This journal entry exercise is actually in Brightspace already. It's under, if you go to Brightspace and you click on content and then you go to that chapter 3 content folder, it's under there. It says chapter 3 in class exercises, I think. So you guys do have this, but again, for those of you that for students not able to join us, or for those of you that would like to go back and watch the recording, later on or whatever, I am recording this meeting, and so I will send out the link to the recording, and you could view it later if you'd like to as well. But anyway, let's get started on this. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And here's that journal entry problem. And again, this is in Brightspace. It's under the chapter 3 content folder. It's an Excel file, chapter 3 in class exercises. And so we're going to work through this together in class today. And so, a couple things I just want to remind you of is our acronym, right? So remember that AID, ADE, and then liquor, LCR, acronym, right? And that'll help us as we're going through this, right? So remember that assets, drawings, and expenses, these increase with the debit, decrease with credit. And then liquor, liabilities, capital, revenue, right? These all decrease with the debit, increase with the credit, right? So kind of keep that in mind as we're going through and getting more practice with these. So this problem, it says Aracel Engineering completed the following transactions in the month of June. So our first one, letter A. Did someone have
a Zoom? Yeah, I'm going to the trainers.
Hold on, let me silence that person. I don't think they meant to I don't think they meant to have their conversation aired. But anyway, okay. Let's go ahead and get practice with this. So, letter A, Jenna Aracel, the owner, invested 100,000 cash, office equipment with a value of 5,000, and 60,000 in drafting equipment to launch the company. So hopefully we can see here, we've got 3 different assets being invested, right? We've got 100,000 cash. We've got office equipment worth 5. We've got 60,000 drafting equipment, right? So we've got 3 different assets being invested here. So we need to debit those assets. And again, the credit is to owner capital, right? This represents the owner's investment in the company. And so we will debit cash, 100,000. We will debit office equipment, 5,000. We will debit drafting equipment, 60,000. And then again, the 3 of these together, these 3 assets that the owner has invested, the combination represents the owner's investment in the company. And so that is owner capital. So credit owner capital, 165,000. So that's what that first journal entry would look like. Hopefully we're okay with that. Any questions about that first one?
Can you start all over again? Oh my God, babe.
my goodness. Um, yeah, I don't know. Let's see. Okay. Well, we'll keep going. Letter B. The company purchased land worth $49,000 for an office by paying $6,300 cash and signing a long-term note payable for $42,700. Okay, so land is the asset. We're purchasing land. We're paying $6,300 cash, and then we've got this note payable for $42,700. Here, somebody just put something in the chat. Let me see what it says here. Oh, Julia said, I'm sorry. I guess that was your your phone. I just don't want everyone to hear your private conversations. So I try to mute it if I think, it might be an accident. But anyway, okay. All right, so the asset is land. So we're debiting land for 49. We're paying part cash, so we're gonna credit cash, and then the note payable, that's the liability. So we're gonna credit note payable for 42,700. So this is a debit to land for 49,000, a credit to cash for 6,300, and a credit to notes payable. Basically, notes payable is like taking out a long-term loan, like a car loan, for example, or a mortgage, right? 42,700 is what that one would look like. Okay, letter C. The company purchased a portable building with 55,000 cash and moved it onto the land acquired in B. So good. We bought that land in transaction B. Now we're purchasing a building to put on it. So again, this is an asset, right? Building is an asset. Assets increase with the debit. So we're debiting building, and we paid cash. So we're crediting cash. So debit building 50. Oh, hot dog. 55,000. Credit cash 55,000 is what that entry would look like. So are we okay with A, B, and C? Any questions about these first three before we scroll down? Okay, let's look at these next few then. So letter D, the company paid 3,000 cash for the premium on an 18-month insurance policy. So remember, this is prepaid insurance. Prepaid insurance is an asset to us because now this insurance policy is going to cover us for 18 months. And so we're debiting the asset, prepaid insurance, and we paid cash. So we're crediting cash. So this one, we're going to debit prepaid insurance 3,000. We're going to credit cash 3,000. Okay. And one thing I want to point out to you while we've got this pulled up is where we're going with this in chapter 4, right? So we talked about the first 4 steps of the accounting cycle, and we've been getting practice with those. Step 5 is the adjusting entries, and prepaid insurance is a good example of one of these adjusting entries, because if you think about this, we paid, let me change my drawer here. We paid 3,000 for this policy, and it's going to cover us for 12 months. And so if we do the excuse me, 18 months. Hold on one second. Let me be accurate here. 18 months, it's going to cover us, right? So if we do the math on this, 3,000 divided by 18, that means our insurance is $166.67 per month. And so every month as we use up this policy, then we will adjust this account. And so that's what we're getting into in chapter 4, our adjusting entries. But that's a real good example of one of those common adjusting entries, right? Because every month, This is an 18-month policy. Every month we use a little bit of that coverage up. And so every month we have to adjust that account. So anyway, we get into that in chapter 4. The next one, letter E, the company completed and delivered a set of plans for a client and collected $6,200 cash. So we are an engineering company. Now we've just completed and delivered a set of plans. So this is our revenue, right? We're earning revenue here. The customer's paying cash. So we're going to debit cash. Cash is going up. So we're debiting cash, $6,200. We're going to credit revenue, right? This is us earning revenue. Okay. Letter F, the company purchased 2,000 of office supplies on account from Office Depot. So similar to letter D, we are purchasing an asset here. The asset is office supplies, right? And similar to letter D, supplies are considered a prepaid expense, right? Because now we've purchased these 2,000 worth of supplies and these might last us 4 or 5 or 6 months or whatever, right? So this is a prepaid expense essentially. And this is an asset to us. So we're going to debit office supplies 2,000. And then remember that on account, right? That on account means that we did not pay cash. We created a debt, accounts payable. So we're crediting accounts payable is what that one would look like. Okay, doing all right with those? Any questions about those ones? Let's see if I can copy this and bring it down so we can keep looking at it as we're going. All righty. Okay, so now letter G. The company purchased 20,000 of additional drafting equipment by paying 9,500 cash and signing a long-term note payable for 10,500. Okay, so we're purchasing an asset, right? Obviously the asset here, drafting equipment. We're paying 9,500 cash and we're taking out a loan for the rest, right? Just like if we were to take out a car loan, we owe for the rest. Okay, so this one we're going to debit drafting equipment, 20,000. We're going to credit cash because we're paying part cash, 9,500. And then we're going to credit notes payable. We still owe 10,500 on that. And again, that notes payable, just like accounts payable, right? That's a liability, a debt that we owe. Okay, letter H. The company completed 14,000 of engineering services for a client. This amount is to be received in 30 days. Okay, let me scroll back up real quick and look at this last revenue transaction, right? So remember up here, and that's what letter H is. It's a revenue transaction. We've completed engineering services for a client, right? It's a revenue transaction. But let's highlight, or let's go back up and just remind ourselves, this transaction E was also a revenue transaction, right? We completed engineering services. We delivered a set of plans. We earned revenue, right? The difference is letter E, that customer paid cash. Letter H, we have to send them a bill and they have 30 days to pay us, right? And so remember, that's accounts receivable. So down here on letter H, we're going to debit accounts receivable. That is money that we expect to receive from our client, 14,000. We're going to credit revenue, 14,000. So again, we can see in both of these, Letter E, we credited revenue because we earned revenue. We've got to record revenue when it is earned. That's that revenue recognition principle. And then we credited revenue here, right? But both of those revenue transactions, again, the difference is this customer paid cash, this customer is accounts receivable, they still owe us the money, right? And actually, when we go down a few more transactions, this customer on letter H does make a payment on their account, right? So we get to see that as well. But any questions about those few before I scroll down? Looking okay, hopefully getting better, getting easier, making more sense. Okay, letter I, the company purchased 1,150 of additional office equipment on credit. All right, so the asset is office equipment. Office equipment is going to go up with a debit, increase with a debit. And then this is going to be accounts payable. This is a small amount. This wouldn't be something we're taking out a loan for necessarily, like a note payable. But accounts payable, right? So this one we would have debit office equipment, 1150, credit accounts payable. So, we'll talk about this more too. And I know I've mentioned it in class before, but accounts payable, we generally expect to have paid off within 1 year. So usually if it takes longer than a year to pay it off, or if we anticipate it taking longer than a year to pay off, like a car loan, for example, then it would be notes payable, right? That's usually considered long-term, where accounts payable is a current liability, or we expect to pay it off within a year. So, okay, letter J. The company completed engineering services for 22,000 on credit. Again, this is exactly like letter H, right? Letter J is exactly like letter H. It's just worded a little bit differently. So in letter H, they said the amount is to be received within 30 days. We have to know, okay, they still owe us money. That's accounts receivable. In letter J, it says, completed engineering services for 22,000 on credit. But again, it means the same thing, accounts receivable. The customer did not pay us cash. They still owe us the money. So it's a debit, accounts receivable, 22,000, credit revenue, 22,000. Hot dog, not 2,200, 22,000. Okay, so that's what those would look like. Same as letter H, right? We completed engineering services. Customer still owes us the money. So we good with that? Feeling good, like we should, hopefully. All right. Let me scroll down to the next few here then. Letter K. The company received a bill for rent of equipment that was used on a recently completed job. The 1,333 rent cost must be paid within 30 days. Okay, fine. So this is an expense. This is equipment rental expense, we could call it. But we haven't paid it yet. We just received the bill. We must pay it within 30 days. And so this is accounts payable. So again, we're going to debit the expense, equipment rent, hot dog, equipment rental expense, 1,333. We're going to credit accounts payable. We still owe for that 1,333. Okay. Letter L. The company collected 7,000 cash in partial payment from the client described in transaction H. Okay, let's scroll back up to letter H. Again, here was letter H. The company completed 14,000 of engineering services for the client. The amounts to be received in 30 days. Okay, now, so this customer owes us 14,000. Now they're making a payment of 7,000, right? So they're paying off half of their balance due essentially. So what we need to do, they're paying cash. So we're going to debit cash, 7,000. We're going to credit accounts receivable, 7,000. So that's going to increase our cash and then reduce the amount that they owe, right? And let me scroll back up real quick. You know, when we build this client, right? When we build this client, we debited accounts receivable. When we sent them this invoice, we billed this client, we debited accounts receivable. Now they're paying part of it off. We're crediting accounts receivable, right? They're paying part of it off. So hopefully that makes sense, right? When we sent them the bill, we sent them the invoice, we debited accounts receivable. Now they're making a payment. We're doing the opposite. We're crediting AR. Okay, good. Letter M, the company paid 1,200 cash for wages to a drafting assistant. So again, this is an expense. It's a wage expense. So we're going to be debiting the expense, crediting cash, right? Because we paid cash for this. Let me get some of this stuff out of the way. I wrote that in there. I know you guys have seen that before because I've written it on the board, but debit wage expense. 1,200. Credit cash. 1,200 is what that one would look like. Okay. Looking okay. Any questions about those few before I scroll up? Okay. All right, let's go down here. So this next one, letter N, it says the company paid 1,150 cash to settle the account payable created in transaction I. Okay, let's go back and look at I real quick. If we scroll back up here, here was letter I. So letter I, we purchased this office equipment and we purchased it on credit. And just like I've pointed out in class to you guys so far, when we created this debt, we credited accounts payable, right? We created this debt, we credited accounts payable. Now that we're paying some of it off, we got to do the opposite. We need to debit AP, which is going to reduce accounts payable, and we need to credit cash. That's going to be our entry this time. Let me copy this and I'll bring it down a little bit. So we credited AP when we created this debt. Now we're going to do the opposite. We're going to debit AP, which reduces accounts payable. So this one, debit accounts payable. Again, accounts payable is that liability. And with this debit, we are reducing it. How much? 1,150. And then we're crediting cash because we paid cash. So that reduces the cash asset. That reduces the liability, accounts payable. Okay. Letter O, the company paid 925 cash for minor maintenance of its drafting equipment. So again, this is an expense. We'd call it probably maintenance expense. So we're debiting the expense, right? Now this expense is increasing because we've incurred this expense. We're debiting the expense. We're crediting cash because we paid cash. So debit maintenance expense, 925. Credit cash, 925 is what that one would look like. Okay. Letter P, Jenna Aerosol withdrew 9,480 cash from the company for personal use. So this is an owner drawing, right? The name of this company is Aerosol Engineering. Jenna Aerosol, the owner, withdrew 9,480 cash from the company. So again, owner drawings is increasing. We're debiting owner drawings. We're crediting cash. So this is debit owner drawings, 9,480, credit cash is what that one would look like. All right, are we okay with these few before we move down? Okay, let me copy this so I can keep bringing it down with us as we're going. Okay, here are our next few. Letter Q, the company paid 1,200 cash for wages to a drafting assistant. So actually, we already did this one. Let me scroll back up. What letter was that? Right here. We paid 1,200 cash for wages to a drafting assistant. So this is going to look exactly the same, right? We're paying this assistant again. So I am just going to copy and paste. Same transaction, right? We're just paying this assistant again. We're debiting the expense, we're crediting cash. Yeah. Okay, letter R. The company paid 2,500 cash for advertisements on the web during June. So similar to letter Q, right? This is an expense. So we're going to be debiting the expense. We're going to be crediting cash. In this case, advertising expense. Advertising expense is the debit, 2,500. And then again, we're going to credit cash. We paid cash, 2,500. Okay. Letter S, the company paid 500 cash for this month's utility bill. Again, similar to Q, similar to R, we are paying an expense. In this case now, it's utility expense. We paid for it with cash, so we're debiting utility expense, 500. We're crediting cash, 500 is what that one would look like. All right, we got a couple more to go. Any questions about these few while we've got them pulled up? Looking okay. All right, well, here are our last two. So letter T, the company completed engineering services for another client and collected 12,000 cash. So good, we're earning revenue here. The client's paying cash, that's awesome. So cash is going up, we're debiting cash. And then revenue is going up. We're crediting revenue. So this one would be debit, cash, 12,000, credit, revenue, 12,000 is what that one would look like. Okay, and last and maybe least, I don't know. I don't remember all the amounts. Last and least, potentially. The company received a bill for 300 for this month's telephone bill. So again, it's not saying that we paid it, right? We just received this bill. And so we're going to debit the expense. We're going to credit accounts payable. So this one would be debit telephone expense, 300, credit accounts payable, 300. Now, I don't know, the company, I know we've seen examples before where when it's been a telephone bill, the company called it utility expense. I mean, really, if you think about it, like water, sewer, trash, electric, gas, telephone, I mean, those are all considered utilities. So they could be lumped together, or the company could have separate accounts for each of them, right? Depending on how detailed they wanted their reports to be. So anyway, there's again, several different journal entries that we've gotten practice with before, that we'll continue to get practice with. But any questions about this problem that we worked through together today? Looking okay? All right, let me stop sharing my screen. Hello again, everybody. But by the way, even though I'm not on campus, I am representing. I got my William Woods gear on, in case you were wondering. But no, what I'm going to do, like I said, I've been recording this meeting. So if you joined us late, or if you were having problems connecting or whatever, I have recorded this meeting. I will send out the recording link to everybody. And then I will also send you this Excel file with all the journal entries with the answers that we did today, so that you have that. When we come back together on campus on Wednesday, we'll go through a journal entry problem where we all get to pick one of the journal entries and we all get to give a piece of the answer. And so that'll be fun when we're back in class. But anyway, any questions at all that we have right now? All right, everybody. Well, enjoy your day, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.